Welcome. In this video, we will discuss about the G20 summit which was recently held. So this year the host was Saudi Arabia, and a very remarkable thing was approached by India, and they started about talking about it. So in this video, we will talk about all the things which were important in the G20 summit of 2020, what all things are important from your UPSC perspective, as well as we'll also try to understand little bit about the G20 grouping. So let's begin. So recently at the G20, which is also called as Group of 20, summit held virtually, India called for a new global index for the post-corona world. So India said that in the post-corona world, so corona has caused a lot of hindrances, has actually kind of hampered the way of life that was known pre-COVID. So the idea is going forward now, such a pandemic, such a global level of catastrophe has already happened. There should be some kind of changes with the world at a huge need to take so that we can be more prepared for the post-COVID world. So this is something which India proposed, and they called it as the new global index. So what are the major pillars on which this new global index will be supported on? So it is talent, technology, transparency, and trusteeship towards the planet. So G20, India muted for T4, which will form the new global index. So this is how the relationship you could remember: new global index related with T20, and T4 are the pillars in which this particular index is based on: talent, technology, transparency, as well as trusteeship with the planet. This year's summit was hosted by Saudi Arabia, so it was hosted by Saudi Arabia for this year. Now let's move forward and try to understand what is this global new index is all about. So the talent, so the one of the pillar was talent. So what does comprises of talent? So the focus must shift to multi-skilling and reskilling from capital and finance to create a vast human talent pool. So the talent is one of the major thing that need to be focused on. So basically on the development of human resource is one of the major tasks going forward in the post-COVID world. Multi-skilling as well as reskilling, both of the tenets has to be taken care of. Then India initiatives such as National Skill Development Mission, which aims to create convergence across sectors and state in terms of skill training activities, is already in direction of creating a vast human talent pool. So if you know that Skill Development Ministry is there, which is specifically focused on the development of skills. So we know that in terms of India, there is a term which is very frequently heard called as the demographic dividend. What does it mean? That because of the demography structure of a country is going to get some dividend, which means that if there is more people of young age or working age group, then the economy could boom. So they could get more dividend or more profit just because they have the maximum population in the working age category. So such kind of thing has been talked about India for a long time now, and India is considered as one of the young country. So because of it, it is very eminent that the skill development or the talent pool for human resources is also created. India's new education policy, which was recently launched, and it talks about major haul for the primary, secondary, and even pre-primary as well as the higher education itself. So it talks about the overhaul of such system. So the new education policy and the programs such as Pradhan Mantri Innovative Learning Program, or what is called as Dhruv, are well aligned with this element. So basically, with the Pradhan Mantri Innovative Learning Program, Dhruv also, the idea is to skill the human resource in India. So this is one of the pillar. Next pillar is the technology. So ensuring the technology reaches all segment of the society, and value of new technology should be measured by their benefit to humanity. So this is what India talks about. So technology which creates more harm to the society than its benefit is not something which India is asking for. The technology which is accessible and which creates more value to the society as a whole should be pushed for. We already know that we have entered the age of Industry 4.0, which means that now is the time for artificial intelligence, cloud computing, robotics, all these things have come. So which means that technology is at the forefront of this era. In that regard, providing the accessibility to technology should one of be the tenets. Digital India and e-governance campaign of India have increased people access to technology and other government services. So under the Digital India program, a lot of services has been provided to the people digitally. We have the e-governance campaign also, where the grievance redressal could happen over the portals now, over the digital media. So this kind of things has already been started. So we have now already discussed two pillars of the new global index. One is talent, other was is technology. Now let's talk about the transparency as well. So reforms such as right to information, which was introduced in 2005, which provide access to all kind of information which are in public interest in the public domain. And then the ease of doing business also, which India has been increasing its position over a period of time. So there has been increase in the rank of India in the ease of doing business, which is released by World Bank over a period of time. So both of these things means that India is increasing its transparency in the governance. So these are few things which again India is aligned with the third pillar of the new global index, which is transparency. And finally, the trusteeship. The word should deal with the environment and nature as trustee rather than owners, which would inspire us towards a holistic and healthy lifestyle. So this is the idea. Instead of considering that all the resources of the earth are at your disposal, or you are like owners of those resources, try to think is like you are trustee. You are merely taking care of these resources and in the meanwhile maybe utilizing it. But the idea should be that you feel responsible towards the whole resources. You are just a trustee and not the owner. So this is something as a concept which India is pushing for. Climate change must be fought not in silos but in an integrated, comprehensive and holistic way. So this is what India is muting, that no one country is actually equipped enough to tackle the menace of climate change, and because of it, it's really the poignant thing to do that the integrated and cooperative efforts is done in that regard. A principle whose benchmark could be per capita carbon footprint. Carbon footprint is the amount of greenhouse gases, primarily carbon dioxide, released into the atmosphere by the particular human activity. So India is also talking about that per capita carbon footprint should also become a benchmark to check the progress of any country's economy or development, so that like not only per capita income but the per capita footprint, carbon footprint also become a kind of a principle to see the development of any country. So these are the four pillars in which or on which the new global index could be formed, and India is talking about it. So these are the details. Now let's move forward and try to see what are the India's initiative in regard to how it is trying to curb the emission. So Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure, announced by the Prime Minister at the Hamburg G20 meet in 2017. This is one of the initiative which India took in order to develop resilience against the disaster. This act as a conveying body that will pool best practices and resources from around the world for reshaping the construction, transportation, energy, telecommunication and water, so that the building in these core infrastructure sector in natural catastrophe. So basically the idea is to build buildings which are disaster resilient. So we know that during the disaster, buildings and construction, transportation, these are the structure which cause a lot of damage. So if the idea behind this disaster resilient infrastructure is that to develop these infrastructure in such a way that they are able to withstand the any kind of disaster. This particular thing was started by India in the Hamburg, which is G20 summit held in 2017. India-France joint initiative of International Solar Alliance. So basically in order to tap the amount of solar energy which the countries which are like between the from equator to tropic of Cancer and equator to tropic of Capricorn, all this north and south, if they are included, which get a lot of sunlight, if they could come together and provide the solar energy. So solar energy not only will help to curb the other energy source like the coal, but is also a very good renewable energy resources. So in that regard, India and France started the International Solar Alliance, and it has its secretariat in Gurugram, India. So in fact, it is one of the international convention for which the secretariat is located in Gurugram, India. Then in government has also started schemes like the Unnat Jyoti by affordable LEDs for all Ujala, and the LED Street Lighting National Program SLNP, which has made LED lights popular, saving around 38 million tons of carbon dioxide emissions per year. Because what happened, if you are talking about the not saving of electricity, it will require to produce more electricity, and production of electricity require burning of fossil fuels, for majorly the coal. So for that regard, indirectly you are curbing the emission of carbon dioxide when you are decreasing the consumption of electricity. So this scheme has worked on those lines. Then we also have Ujjwala scheme. Smoke-free kitchens have provided over 80 million households, making it among the largest clean energy drives globally. So this is something in which the LPG cylinder is provided to the women of the BPL families, under which they would be able to use the cleaner fuel for cooking instead of going through the like burning of woods and charcoal. Instead of that, they get the LPG. Then we also have the National Clean Air Program, in which a targeted goal is set up to decrease the amount of particulate matter in the atmosphere. So a targeted approach has been adopted in the National Clean Air Program. And we also have the Namami Gange program, which seeks to rejuvenate the river Ganga and show the spirit of trusteeship in governance. So these are the initiatives which India has already started in terms of how it is acting as a trustee towards the planet and not as a owner. So this is something which India has already started. Now we discussed about what was discussed in this particular G20 summit. Let's try to shed some light what G20 is actually. So it is an informal group. Just remember, it is not a formal grouping but an informal group of 19 countries and the EU, which means it has 20 members overall, and hence the name comes G20, with representatives of the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank. So it has the representative from IMF and the World Bank as well. The G20 membership comprises of a mix of world's largest advanced and emerging economies, representing about 2/3 of the world population, 85% of GDP, 80% of global investment, and the 75% of global trade. So you can understand these are the major economies of the world. So by the sheer amount of percentage they have in the international trade, you can understand that they are the countries because of which the global trade is churning. So just try to remember this data. It can come really handy when you are talking about or when you are writing any mains answer regarding to the various grouping, and if you are trying to introduce the G20, this particular point could come really handy to introduce it. Now let's just quickly see who are all the members of G20. So if we start from the North America, Canada, US and Mexico, both are like all the three are the members of G20. In South America, we have Brazil and Argentina. In Africa, we have only South Africa. And then in Asia, we have Saudi Arabia, India, China. Russia is actually a part of Eurasia. Then we have Indonesia over here, South Korea and Japan. We have Australia, and then in the Europe we have UK, France, Italy, Germany and Turkey. So these are the 20 nations which have formed the grouping of G20, and these are the major economies of the world. So I hope you have understood this video. If you have any doubt, feel free to drop a comment. Thank you.